The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.
Wrestling to the Max, 205 Live. And now, your hosts, Harry Broadhurst and Brandon Biskobing. That's right, we get names in our introduction here.
Huzzah!
Good evening, afternoon, whenever you're listening, and welcome as we are live to tape on the W2M Network with the Wrestling to the Max 205 Live review for Tuesday, August 7th, 2018. I am your host. My name is Harry Broadhurst. He is your co-host. He is Brandon Biskobing.
Not gonna attempt what you tried last time?
Why do they have to know that this is the second time attempting this? Way to give them a peek behind the curtain, kayfabe killer.
I love breaking the fourth wall.
It's funny because he does. All right. For the sake of, for the point of reference here, it is almost 12:30 a.m. on the East Coast. And I have to be up early in the morning, so let's go ahead and get through this, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right, our opening contest for 205 Live is a tag match scheduled for one fall.
One fall, player.
I hate you so much sometimes. As the Loser House Party... Wait, that's not right. That's...
No. I'm coming up... The nickname that they gave him is good enough, but I'm giving them a new nickname. It is generic luchador faction numbered 5.
How about this? We'll tie it into our years of independent wrestling watching. You ready?
Okay.
Los Genericos.
yeah, precisely. Well done.
Kalisto and Lince Dorado take on Team Musclemen. They got to be musclemen. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Of Tony Nese and Buddy Murphy. I'm getting fired. In the end, Nese and Murphy pick up the win when Nese rolls up Kalisto and hooks the tights for the pinfall victory at 10 minutes and 47 seconds. Your thoughts on the match itself? I actually thought they had a pretty strong little back and forth match here. I just don't have any real investment in the story.
I don't have any investment in the story at all. I'm just glad that the right team got the win for once.
Well, we saw Kalisto pin Nese in singles action last week, and that was kind of the impetus for this tag match.
Oh, I know.
Now that they have Murphy back in the scene on a regular basis as well, I feel like they kind of missed Murphy, because I feel like Murphy was one of those guys who was catching fire with both his ring work and his microphone work. He is somebody who realistically you could have seen them taking the belt off of Cedric and giving it to Buddy.
Mm-hmm.
But I digress. It doesn't happen. Can you hear me, Brandon? My network is having issues. Okay. And then we get ready for our next contest, scheduled for one fall.
One fall.
As Noam Dar has a singles match against Sean Maluta. How did they pronounce his name tonight?
I don't know, but he will forever be known as the mini Roman Reigns. Or how did I describe him on SmackDown? I know I referenced him.
Starter Roman Reigns.
Oh, yes, starter Roman Reigns. There we go.
Maluta puts in an effort at going after the knee, much the same way that TJP tried to do with Noam Dar last week on 205 Live. It does not work out very well for Maluta, as the Shining Wizard kick from Noam Dar, he has a name for it. I heard Vic Joseph say it. I do not remember it. But that gets the pinfall victory at approximately 30 minutes-ish. My tablet restarted, so I don't have an exact time in front of me. If you stall for a few seconds, I can get the exact time.
I think it was probably about that, probably like 10, 13 minutes, something like that. It was a decent match, nothing too crazy to speak of. Maluta has been on NXT for a couple of weeks now, mostly jobbing out, and then now again on 205 Live. For those of you who do not remember Maluta, he was on the Cruiserweight Classic. I believe he lost in the first round, didn't he?
He did lose in the first round. A lot of those Cruiserweight Classic guys are popping up on NXT, though.
Mm-hmm. Which I like.
You see Maluta every now and then. You see Fabian Eichner a lot on NXT TV as well.
Yeah. You know who I wish they would have signed? And albeit I wouldn't have liked to have seen him being used as a jobber, but I still would have liked him, although I think he's doing a decent bit on the indies, is Damac.
Well, he's still over in Germany as far as I'm aware of.
I believe you're right. He was in the World Cup, I remember.
Oh, the one that WCPW did?
Yeah.
I vaguely remember hearing about it. I don't think I ever watched any of the shows.
I didn't watch any of them, but I remember looking up like the brackets and seeing his name on it.
Because I know there were a lot of big-name independent wrestlers and some names that people would have heard of in that tournament as well, i.e. guys like Alberto Del Patron and Rey Mysterio Jr.
Zack
as well.
Sabre.
Right. I think Cody was in that tournament too, if I'm not mistaken.
You may be right.
All right. Noam Dar calls it the Supernova Kick, and it was 2 minutes and 23 seconds. Dueling promos from Cedric Alexander and Drew Gulak as they both talk about their opinion of what's going to go down at SummerSlam. In addition, we announced one half of the matches for the main matches for next week's episode of 205 Live, as Cedric Alexander is once again in action, going the opposite route of the way we usually go to a Cruiserweight title defense. Gulak has the time off. It is Cedric Alexander taking on Jack Gallagher.
I mean, that kind of makes sense, especially with how Gulak's character is. He's not so much a coward heel, but he's still kind of, he's not exactly, Cedric has, built himself as a fighting champion, so it would make sense that he would, have a match.
Gulak says that regardless of what happens in the match with Gallagher next week on 205 Live, the facts remain the facts, and that if you step to Drew Gulak, you will tap out. Can we just put the belt on him right now and get it over with?
Hey, you may get your wish.
I don't think there's a may about it, Brandon.
You think, especially with what came out, that he's going to get the title? Or do you think, regardless of that, he was going to get the title?
Well, I don't know what you're talking about, but at the same time, I'm just saying that it makes more sense for Gulak to get the belt than it would for them to keep it on Alexander.
I'll agree with that, but...
We'll talk off air, because I don't like giving spoilers on air.
Well, no, it's not a spoiler. It's a, off-screen thing.
All right, I'll bite then. I'm listening.
You haven't seen the whole thing about someone digging up tweets from Alexander from, 2006? Or...
Yeah, I did see that, but at the same time, it's happened before with WWE personalities, and they chalked it up to inexperience and being immature and stupid. And frankly, this is just a bunch of Twitter police going on the offensive, trying to be a bunch of SJWs anyway.
Oh, I agree, but, with how WWE has been, and especially with the, new contracts and all of that, you would think that, unfortunately, I have a feeling that they're going to try to be more, proactive and more, trying to show that they're, caring and everything by stripping him of not stripping him outright, but, kind of pushing him down the card now. Unfortunately.
My apologies to Sean in advance for this, because you probably know where this is going.
Yes.
If you are one of those people who feels the need to look through people's back catalog
You
on
are
social
a
media,
low-life SOB.
the words that I would use are a little bit different than Brandon's. If you're one of those people that's searching through other people's old timelines on their social media accounts in order to try to throw them under a bus, you're a fucking asshole.
Yep, pretty much.
Send all hate mail to Harry Broadhurst, HEBTheEagle at yahoo.com. Bring it on, bitches. Anyway, our main event scheduled for one fall
One fall.
is Mustafa Ali, the heart of 205 Live, and apparently the head.
What?
This is my not impressed face.
I'm missing something here.
Taking on Hideo Itami.
Okay.
I hate concussion angles.
Oh, yes.
They aren't funny. They aren't relevant. They aren't fodder. They aren't something that's meant to make a joke about it. People die.
Not just that, but like, if you're gonna do it, it's one thing. But if you're gonna do it, then you need to keep them off TV for a while. And I'm assuming that Ali is not going to be kept off TV for a couple of weeks.
Knowing what we know in this day and age about concussions, they are not something to be made light of. They are not something to be turned into an angle.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, I don't have any issue with most things in the world of professional wrestling. Professional wrestling is of its own distinction when it comes to certain things that are not discussable under certain normal situations. Concussions are an exception to that because we know the kind of damage that they can cause. The only saving grace that I could think of with this is that I know the WWE is working with Christopher Nowitzki's foundation. So hopefully they'll do some kind of accurate portrayal of the effects of a concussion going forward, rather than this just being a stupid one-off in order to give Hideo Itami a win over Mustafa Ali, which he gets in about 16 minutes tonight on 205.
Mm-hmm.
What were your thoughts on the match here? Because I don't want to go too far into this here. I made my opinion known. The match itself is actually pretty good until the boneheaded finish.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts, Brandon?
Yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts as well. The match itself was good up until the end. And then I honestly kind of missed what happened at the very end. I kind of glanced away and then saw, Ali holding his head with, the ref and the doctors looking at him. So I didn't see exactly what happened that caused it. But, yeah, it's, like I said before, unless they're going to keep him off TV for a few weeks, it just doesn't work in today's world.
I can't speak out enough as to how much I disagree with them using the concussion as a storyline angle.
I mean, I'm okay with it if they actually followed what other sports would follow in terms of protocol and everything, just because it would make it feel more real. But, but if they're gonna do it and have him act like he has a concussion and then have him come back, the very next week and, try to play it off as the fighting spirit and everything, then it's ridiculous, because it just shows that, that WWE has no inkling of what's going on, because any other legitimate, sports entity would not allow their athletes to compete the next week.
We'll see what they do with the follow-up is all I have to say to this.
Exactly.
But for now, I don't approve.
I'm holding my judgment until we see what comes of this.
Scale of 1 to 10, Brandon, where do you fall for this week's episode of 205 Live?
I'll give it a 7. The opening match was fun, especially with having Nese and Murphy win. The second match, it was what it was. And then the main event, while the match itself was good, the ending we have to kind of hold our judgment on.
I'm going to give it a 7 as well, but it's going to lean more towards a 6. And the reason I say that is because the ending leaves a very bad taste in my mouth as somebody who's well aware of the effects of concussions on athletes. Somebody who has done a lot of research about the subject, who follows the sport of professional football on a regular basis and is aware of what the effects that concussions are having on professional football athletes, that concussions have had on professional wrestlers before. Tread very, very lightly, Hunter.
Like I said, if they actually use it, if it's a situation where they're using it as a storyline, but they actually follow the protocol that would be used if he legitimately had a concussion, and they don't have him come back immediately, then I'm okay with it. But if it's a situation where they try to bring him back almost immediately as an indication of his fighting spirit and whatnot, then it's ridiculous because, no other fighting organization, the UFC, WBO, WBA, IBF, no matter what you're talking about, no other fighting organization would let an athlete come back almost immediately after they got a concussion to come back into the ring.
One word review, Brandon. What do you got for me?
I'll say lackluster. The opening matches were okay. The main event, while good in the ring, the ending kind of, leaves you a bit iffy. And there wasn't really much to write home about on this show. Next week definitely seems like the bigger show. This was kind of just like this was kind of just a throwaway episode, I felt.
Well, not only does next week have the aforementioned Alexander and Gallagher match, it also has
Leo Rush versus Tozawa.
Yeah, the rematch between Rush and Tozawa is where I was heading with that as well. I know it's going to feel like I'm piling on here, but my one-word review is bitter. Because that's the taste left in my mouth after the way we went off the air for this show.
I'm still holding my opinion on it for what, I'm waiting to see how they play with this.
We'll see where it goes going forward and what they decide to do with it here. Hopefully they use it to expand people's knowledge of the severity of concussions in the world of professional wrestling rather than downplaying the effects here. I mean, they are just coming off of a very serious lawsuit from a couple of former performers over a history of concussions sustained while with the company as well. So you would think that in the process of everything they've gone through with regards to that, they would have learned their lesson. But we'll see if they have, and we'll see what happens going forward.
And not to mention, while it's been 11 years since, the whole reason why the company is the way it is because of a result of concussions.
Chronic traumatic encephalopathy, I believe, was it?
Yes.
And it's something... pathy or something. I don't know.
It's some sort of clinical E word.
I'm sure even if I look it up, I won't be able to pronounce it.
Yes.
But CTE is the abbreviation if you want to do the research for yourself. And I know his name doesn't get mentioned in the world of professional wrestling anymore. But you look back to what Brandon was talking about 11 years ago in the case of Chris Benoit, a repeated series of concussions.
And if it wasn't for Chris Benoit, we wouldn't. Who knows where we would be in professional wrestling right now in terms of storylines and all of that. He was the impetus for the PG era.
And not to mention here, who knows where we would be in terms of wrestlers' health and well-being now with the wellness policy that was instituted after his death.
Mm-hmm.
You'd still have people dropping dead year after year like they did during the Attitude Era.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of which, a couple of quick things to talk about here on the show, since we didn't really get to talk about them on the SmackDown Live review. Nikolai Volkov, Brian Christopher, and there was a third. I'm trying to remember. Brickhouse Brown.
Yep.
Anything to add here? Any comments? Anything that you have to say about the gentleman?
Not too much. I mean, obviously sad at their passing, but never really paid attention to any of the three a ton.
Of the three, I was most familiar with Christopher just because he was in prominence in the WWF as part of Too Cool once I started getting back into professional wrestling.
Yeah.
But
I mean, Too Cool I never really paid attention to all that much.
As somebody who watched all of the early era TNA pay-per-views, he was a vital part of those as well.
Mm.
So Christopher, not to mention the fact that he's the son of Jerry Lawler, makes him probably the most relevant in terms of the mainstream fan as well.
Oh, definitely.
But our condolences to the families on their passing. Not ones that are going to stick with us, but at the same time, you never want to see somebody go while they're still, in Brian Lawler's case, in the relative prime of his life, even if it was through his own hands.
Yes.
If you're looking for the plugs for the ways that you can listen to me and Brandon, check out the SmackDown Live review for this week. It has everything that you need, plugging all of our various shows here. In addition, you can listen to the W2M Network family of podcasts on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spreaker, Podbean, CastBox, and Brandon, guess what?
Spotify's coming. Or it's here.
Way to screw up the bit.
I know. I'm so used to saying it's coming.
No, Glacier's still coming. Spotify is here.
Yes.
Again, Remix Pro Wrestling, September 15th. I'm working on it. I'd like to say I get a break for you, but that break lasts like 21 hours.
Yep.
For those that don't know, the kickoff returns today, Wednesday, August 8th, 2018. As we cover college football, that is the only plug that I will throw in here because it is the most relevant of all the plugs that I could throw in here. He's Brandon Biskobing. I'm Harry Broadhurst. This has been the Wrestling to the Max 205 Live review for Tuesday, August 7th, 2018. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you next week with the go-home for SummerSlam for the Purple Brand as we highlight the Cruiserweight title match to happen probably on the kickoff show at SummerSlam between Drew Gulak and Cedric Alexander. Have a good night, everybody. We'll catch you next Tuesday.